Taoiseach, on your watch, Minister Simon Harris has led our health service into a state of absolute crisis. In recent weeks, nurses and midwives were forced to engage in strike action excuse me, because their legitimate and correct concerns in respect of the recruitment and retention crisis were ignored by you and by your government. We've witnessed GPs protest here outside Leinster House, protesting your failure to invest adequately in primary care. Hospital waiting lists have continued to grow, and last week they reached new record levels, with over 523,000 patients now waiting for an outpatient consultation and over 72,000 waiting for an inpatient procedure. This is absolutely scandalous, Taoiseach. The trolley crisis continues unabated, and today there are 512 patients on trolleys in hospitals throughout the state. And despite that, only half the additional beds promised under the HSE's winter plan have been opened. This is absolute madness, Taoiseach. Last week we learned that women who availed of a smear test following the cervical check scandal last year are now waiting up to 6 months to get their test results. And to top it all off, the calamity surrounding the cost overrun, which I hear you today spinning as cost underestimation, in respect of the National Children's Hospital, which is going to have a serious knock-on effect on the delivery of other health projects throughout the state. For example, in Limerick, the provision of a new 60-bed ward block at Limerick University Hospital is the latest project to face the axe, despite the fact that Limerick is consistently one of the hospitals worst affected by overcrowding in the state. So this is a very serious blow to people right across the Midwest region, Taoiseach, and it's frankly unforgivable. In that regard, I want to acknowledge the announcement this morning by the chairperson of the Oireachtas Health Committee, Dr. Michael Harty, that he will support Sinn Féin's no confidence motion in the Minister for Health tomorrow evening. This is significant, and I'm sure Dr. Harty has not taken his decision lightly, but has arrived at the conclusion with the rest of us that something has to be done, because we cannot tolerate the health service in this crisis. Now, your friends in Fianna Fáil, who, as you say, spin yarns, may well be prepared to stand aside and allow the status quo to prevail and for an incompetent minister to remain in office, but we won't. So, Micheál Martin and Fianna Fáil will have the opportunity to put up or shut up tomorrow evening in that regard. In the meantime, Taoiseach, I believe it is incumbent on you to make clear which specific projects are being axed as a result of the National Children's Hospital overrun in health and elsewhere, in flood defences and elsewhere. Across the state, people have a right to accurate information from you.
Deputy, I actually made that clear here last Tuesday in the Chamber. I appreciate you weren't here, you were otherwise occupied. Perhaps in Northern Ireland or in London, I'm not sure, but I outlined in detail exactly which projects will be affected, and in health there are none. Of the €100 million that have to be found from within the health capital budget, or sorry, of the €100 million that has to be found from within other parts of the capital budget, 24 million comes from the Department of Health. The Department of Health has a fund of 94 million. Which is for minor capital repairs, equipment replacement, and that budget has been reduced from 94 million to 70 million, which is still an increase on last year. So it doesn't affect any of the individual new bills or new projects in healthcare, and I'm happy to reiterate that here today. I do not think for a second, of course, Cancora, that won't stop deputies all over the country trying to claim that every project is being delayed or axed, as the deputy says, even when they know it is not true. It's smart, cynical politics to make a false claim like that, so they will make it all over the country for all sorts of projects, and projects are delayed for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes it's because they don't have planning permission yet from the County Council. Sometimes it's because there are objections. Sometimes they're on appeal to Bord Pleanála. Sometimes there are changes in design. Sometimes they go to tender. Sometimes the tenders come back higher than was budgeted for. In relation to Limerick, Count Corla, there has been considerable investment, massive investment by this government in recent years in that particular hospital. A new state-of-the-art emergency department, a new Laban building, including CF, stroke and lots of other facilities, 17 beds only added there in the last year. And in relation to the new 60-bed ward block, it has not been axed. Planning was secured only back in October, November. There's a tendering process which I understand may be complete, but it may not be complete, and that project will proceed to construction this year.
Thank you very much, Deputy McDonald.
So, Taoiseach, I believe it is yourself that is, in fact, spinning the yarns. But you're not on your own. I understand that the Minister for Health himself is attempting to sell a line or spin a line that actually there's nothing to see here, that the cost overruns or the cost underestimations, as you put them, were really no big deal. He seems to imagine that there's a magic money tree somewhere from which he can draw resources. He seems to be in line. He seems to be in line. Well, the members on the Fine Gael benches, I think, need to accept that any claims that they may have made to fiscal prudence and to minding the House and watching the taxpayer's purse have been well and truly blown out of the water at this stage. Can you make it clear, Taoiseach, and confirm absolutely, and can you guarantee that the 60-bed modular ward for Limerick will be delivered on time?
Thank you, Deputy.
Can you give us a precise timeline? Because certainly the view in Limerick is that, in fact, this project has been delayed or axed, but certainly that they will not see delivery on time.
We don't seem to do precise timelines around here very well. Look at the clock.
I think
all the time.
I think Count Corla.
Oh, it applies. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think Count Corla, the Deputy, didn't hear my answer last Tuesday, and the Deputy didn't hear my answer 5 or 6 minutes ago. I answered the question on Limerick already. But I understand this is now part of Sinn Féin spin all over the country. I'm advised that she was on local radio only this morning in Wexford, claiming that the Enniscorthy flood last week, claiming that the Enniscorthy flood relief scheme was also delayed because of the Children's Hospital. This, of course, is not the case. The scheme is absolutely on schedule, and the project is allocated €40 million plus. Turned the sod on the new runway at Dublin Airport last week. We'll turn the sod on the N4 in Sligo this week.
Please.
But what's happening here, Count Corla, and I'm going to call it out again. What's happening here, Count Corla, I'm going to call it out again, is pure cynical spin from the opposition. They're going around the country, and whatever the project is and whatever the reason for delay is, they're pinning it on the Children's Hospital, even when they know it isn't true. And when you try and call them out, on it, they shout you down because they don't want their lies exposed.
Can I just remind the members again that there are thousands of our citizens in their places of work or in their homes looking at the procedures here, and they certainly will not be impressed by the heckling and the antics on all sides of the House. Now, can I call on Deputy Ruth Coppinger, please?